The child's fist hit the door like a dying heartbeat. Once, twice, 3 times. Jacob McAllister grabbed his pistol and yanked the door open. The blizzard screamed into his face. And there, in the howling white darkness, stood a little girl no bigger than a whisper. Behind her, a woman lay face down in the bloody snow, not moving. "Please, sir." The child's voice cracked through frozen lips. "Mama fell. She can't get up no more. If I clean your barn, would you let us sleep there? Just one night. The bad man's coming, and Mama's too weak to run." Jacob looked at the woman's face, and his whole world stopped. He knew those eyes. He'd watched them close forever on a battlefield 8 years ago. If you want to know what happens next, subscribe to our channel and follow this story to the very end. Comment below with the city you're watching from. I want to see how far this tale travels. The hammer came down hard. Once, twice, 3 times. Jacob McAllister drove the last nail into the pine coffin and stepped back. His breath fogged in the frozen air of his workshop. Another box for the dead. Another day of work nobody had ordered. "What do you think, Sergeant?" He glanced at the old hound curled by the cold stove. "Reckon old Miller will appreciate the craftsmanship." Sergeant lifted his graying head. His tail thumped once against the floor. "Yeah." Jacob ran his calloused hand along the coffin's edge. "I don't suppose he will. Dead men ain't particular about their accommodations." 4 coffins this month. 2 for the fever that swept through Silver Creek. 1 for a miner crushed in a cave-in. 1 for old Miller, who simply went to sleep Tuesday night and didn't wake up Wednesday morning. Jacob envied him sometimes. The ones who went quiet. The ones who didn't dream. He crossed to the window and scraped frost from the glass. Outside, the Montana sky hung low and heavy, pregnant with snow. The wind had been building since noon, rattling the workshop walls, howling through the gaps in the timber like something hungry trying to get in. "Storm coming," he said to no one. To Sergeant. To the empty room. "Bad one." The dog whined softly. "I know, boy. I know." Jacob checked his supplies. Enough firewood for 3 days. Enough salt pork and beans for a week. Enough whiskey to keep the nightmares at bay, though lately even that wasn't working so well. 8 years since Appomattox. 8 years since he'd held Daniel Harwood in his arms and watched the light leave those brown eyes. 8 years since he'd made a promise he couldn't keep. "Find my sister. Take care of her. She's got no one else." "I tried Daniel." Jacob pulled on his coat, preparing to bring in more wood before the storm hit. "God knows I tried." But trying wasn't enough. 3 years of letters. 3 years of cold trails and dead ends. Abigail Harwood had vanished into the chaos of the post-war South, swallowed up like so many others. Married someone, finally told him. Married a man named Thornton. Moved west. He'd stopped looking after that. Told himself she was someone else's problem now. Someone else's responsibility. The guilt never stopped, though. It lived in his chest like a second heartbeat, steady and relentless. Jacob opened the workshop door. The wind hit him like a fist, driving ice crystals into his face. He squinted against the assault, reaching for the woodpile, and froze. Something was moving out there, in the white chaos of the gathering storm. A shape. No 2 shapes. Small. Struggling. Coming toward him. The child reached him first. She couldn't have been more than 7 years old. Her coat was thin, torn at the elbows. Her boots were split, and her lips had gone the color of bruised plums. But her eyes burned with something that had no business being in a child so young. Determination. Desperation. The kind of fire that only comes from having nothing left to lose. "Please, sir." Her voice came out in broken gasps. "Please. My mama. She fell. She can't." Jacob didn't wait for her to finish. He pushed past her, wading through knee-deep snow, toward the second figure. A woman face down, dark hair spread across the white ground like spilled ink. Blood. He could see blood bright red against the snow spreading from somewhere beneath her body. He dropped to his knees beside her. "Help me turn her," he called to the child. The little girl was already there, her frozen fingers gripping her mother's shoulder. Together they rolled the woman onto her back. Jacob's heart stopped. For one terrible moment, he wasn't in Montana anymore. He was back in Virginia, in that burning forest shells screaming overhead, men dying all around him. He was kneeling beside Daniel Harwood, pressing his hands against a wound that wouldn't stop bleeding, watching his best friend's life drain away into the churned-up mud. Because this woman, this stranger bleeding in the snow, had Daniel's eyes. The same deep brown flecked with gold. The same shape slightly tilted at the corners. The same look of desperate courage even now, even half-conscious and dying. "Mister?" The child tugged his sleeve. "Mister, is Mama gonna die?" The question snapped him back. Jacob shook his head hard. "Not tonight, she ain't." He scooped the woman into his arms. She weighed nothing. Like a bird. Like something already half gone from this world. "Follow me. Quick now." The child obeyed without question, her small legs churning through the snow behind him. Jacob carried the woman to his cabin, kicked the door open, and laid her on his bed. "Lantern," he barked at the girl. "On the table. Light it." She moved fast, her frozen fingers fumbling with the matches. One struck. 2. 3. The wick caught and warm light flooded the small room. Jacob got his first real look at the woman. Young mid-30s maybe. Pretty once, probably before hunger and fear had carved her down to bone and shadow. Her dress was torn. Her face was gaunt. And on her neck, just visible above her collar, the unmistakable marks of fingers pressed too hard. Bruises. Old ones faded to yellow-green, and newer ones purple-black layered on top. Jacob's jaw tightened. "Where's she hurt?" he asked, his voice rougher than he intended. "Her ankle." The child's voice was steady, too steady for a girl her age. "She hurt it bad. 3 days ago. We've been walking ever since. 3 days on a broken ankle. Mama said we couldn't stop." The girl moved to her mother's side, taking the woman's limp hand in both of hers. "She said he'd find us if we stopped." "Who's he?" The child's face went white. Her lips pressed together. She didn't answer. Jacob decided not to push. Not yet. He turned his attention to the ankle, carefully removing the woman's ruined boot. What he found made him curse under his breath. Broken. Badly. The bone was out of alignment, the flesh swollen and hot with infection. "She's been walking on this for 3 days." The girl nodded. "Dear God." The woman's eyes fluttered open. For a moment she stared at the ceiling, confused, disoriented. Then her whole body went rigid. "Lily." Her hand shot out, grabbing at empty air. "Where's Lily? Where's my—" "I'm here, Mama." The child. Lily pressed her mother's hand to her cheek. "I'm right here. We're safe. This man helped us." The woman's head turned. Her eyes found Jacob's face. And in that moment, he saw everything: fear, suspicion, desperate calculation. She was measuring him, assessing the threat, planning her next move, even as she lay broken and bleeding in a stranger's bed. "Who are you?" she demanded. "Jacob McAllister. You're in my cabin. You collapsed outside. We need to leave." She tried to sit up and immediately cried out, her face going gray with pain. "You ain't going nowhere." Jacob pressed her shoulder firmly back against the pillow. "Not with that ankle." "You don't understand." Tears leaked from the corners of her eyes. "If he finds us here, if Marcus finds us, he'll kill you. He'll kill anyone who helps us. Marcus, please." She gripped his wrist with surprising strength. "Please, just let us go. We'll take our chances in the storm. It's better than what he'll do if he—" "Mama, stop." Lily's voice cut through her mother's panic. "We can't go back out there. You know we can't." The woman Abigail the child had called her squeezed her eyes shut. A sob broke from her throat, raw and terrible. "I can't," she whispered. "I can't keep running. I can't—" "Then don't run." Jacob's voice was calm, steady. "Stay here. Rest. Let me look at that ankle." Abigail's eyes snapped open. Why? Why what? Why would you help us? You don't know us. We're nothing to you. It was a fair question. Jacob had spent 8 years avoiding exactly this kind of entanglement. Strangers' complications, the possibility of more failures. But those eyes, Daniel's eyes. Maybe you're not nothing, he said quietly. Maybe you're exactly what I've been looking for. Abigail stared at him, confusion and suspicion warring in her expression. What does that mean? It means I'm going to set your ankle and feed you both a hot meal. And in the morning, if you still want to leave, I won't stop you. And if we stay, then we'll figure out the rest together. Abigail studied his face for a long moment. Whatever she saw there, honesty maybe or just exhaustion, seemed to satisfy her. The tension in her shoulders eased just slightly. One night, she said finally. That's all. One night, Jacob agreed. But even as he said it, he knew it was a lie. Whatever had brought this woman and her child to his door, whatever darkness was chasing them, he wasn't going to let it catch them. Not this time. Moi. The ankle was worse than he'd thought. Jacob worked by lamplight, his hands steady despite the churning in his gut. He'd set bones before during the war, held down screaming men while surgeons sawed through shattered limbs. But that was different. Those were soldiers. This was a woman who flinched every time he touched her, whose eyes tracked his every movement with the wariness of a trapped animal. This is gonna hurt, he warned. Abigail's jaw tightened. I know. Lily, come hold your mama's hand. The child obeyed instantly, climbing onto the bed and wrapping both hands around her mother's. Her small face was solemn, too old for her years. It's okay, Mama, Lily said softly. I'll be right here. Jacob positioned his hands on the broken ankle. On 3. 1. He pulled. Abigail screamed a short, sharp cry that she cut off by biting her own lip hard enough to draw blood. Her body arched off the bed, every muscle rigid with agony. Done. Jacob released her ankle, already reaching for the splints he'd prepared. Worst part's over. Abigail collapsed back against the pillows, gasping. Sweat beaded on her forehead. But she didn't cry, didn't whimper, just lay there breathing through the pain with a discipline that spoke of long practice. Jacob bound the ankle carefully, wrapping it tight with strips of clean cloth. When he finished, he covered her with blankets and stepped back. You need to sleep. Can't. Abigail's voice was hoarse. Can't sleep. He might. Nobody's coming tonight. Storm's too bad. You're safe. Safe. She laughed, a hollow, broken sound. I don't remember what that feels like. Jacob didn't have an answer for that. He turned to Lily instead. You hungry child. Lily nodded, her eyes huge in her thin face. I'll heat up some stew. You stay with your mama. He moved to the stove, grateful for something to do with his hands. Behind him, he could hear Lily whispering to her mother, soft words of comfort that no child should have to speak. It's okay, Mama. It's okay. Uncle Danny says we're safe now. Jacob froze his hand on the pot of stew. What did you say? Lily looked up at him, her expression innocent. Uncle Danny, Mama's brother. He comes to see me sometimes. In my dreams. The room seemed to tilt. Jacob gripped the edge of the stove, steadying himself. Your Uncle Danny. What does he look like in these dreams? Lily tilted her head, considering. He's tall, brown hair like Mama. He has a nice smile, and he's always wearing a blue coat with gold buttons. Jacob's throat closed. Daniel Harwood had been captured by Union forces early in the war, forced to work as a stretcher bearer. He'd been wearing a Union uniform when he dyed a blue coat with gold buttons. What else does he tell you? Jacob's voice came out strangled. Lily yawned, her eyes heavy with exhaustion. He says someone's coming to help us. Someone who made him a promise. She looked directly at Jacob, her gaze suddenly piercing. He says that someone keeps his promises, even when it takes a long time. Abigail had gone very still on the bed. Lily, what are you talking about? You never knew Uncle Danny. He died before you were born. I know, Mama, but he still visits me. Lily snuggled closer to her mother. He's nice. He says he misses you. Abigail's face crumpled. She pulled her daughter close, hiding her tears in Lily's hair. Jacob turned back to the stove, his hands shaking. It wasn't possible. Couldn't be possible. And yet, the blue coat, the gold buttons, the promise. How could a child who'd never met Daniel Harwood know any of that? Boy. They ate in silence, Jacob watching from across the room, as Abigail helped Lily spoon up the thin stew. The child ate like someone who'd learned not to take food for granted, savoring each bite, scraping the bowl clean. When did you last eat proper? Jacob asked. Abigail didn't meet his eyes. Day before yesterday, maybe longer. And before that? Does it matter? It mattered. But Jacob let it go. Pushing wouldn't get him answers, not from a woman this guarded, this accustomed to protecting herself. You said a name earlier, he said instead. Marcus. Who is he? Abigail's whole body tensed. Lily pressed closer to her side. No one. He's the one you're running from. I said he's no one. He's the one who did that to your neck. Abigail's hand flew to her collar, covering the bruises. Her eyes blazed with sudden fury. You don't know anything about... I know what a man's handprint looks like on a woman's throat. Jacob's voice was flat, hard. I've seen it before. Too many times, so don't tell me he's no one because we both know that's a lie. The fury drained from Abigail's face, replaced by something worse. Defeat. Exhaustion. The look of someone who'd been fighting too long and didn't have anything left. He's my husband's brother, she whispered. William, my husband died 3 years ago. Left everything to Lily. But he named Marcus as her guardian. Guardian. That's what he calls himself, while he locks us in rooms, while he decides when we eat, when we sleep, who we see, while he... Her voice broke. He says I'm unstable, hysterical. He says he's protecting us from ourselves. And the law believes him. The law doesn't care. Bitterness edged her words. Marcus has money, friends in high places, papers that say he's responsible for us, papers that say I'm not fit to care for my own daughter. Jacob absorbed this in silence. He'd seen it before, men who used the law as a weapon, who wrapped their cruelty in legal documents and respectable suits. The ankle, he said slowly. That wasn't an accident, was it? Abigail's silence was answer enough. How'd you get away? He was gone for a week. Business in Helena. I'd been planning for months, hiding money, gathering supplies. The night before he was due back, I took Lily and ran. And he's been following you. He's got Pinkertons, private detectives, men who track people for money. Abigail's laugh was hollow. We've been running for 3 weeks. Every time I think we've lost him, he finds us again. It's like he knows where we are before we do. How'd you end up here at my door? Abigail shook her head. I don't know. We were headed for the Canadian border. Thought maybe we could disappear, start over somewhere he couldn't reach us. Then the storm hit and my ankle gave out and... She looked around the cabin as if seeing it for the first time. I don't even know where here is. Montana Territory. About 5 miles from a town called Silver Creek. Something flickered in Abigail's eyes. Recognition, fear. Silver Creek, she repeated. I've heard that name. From who? She frowned, trying to remember. I don't... William mentioned it once, I think. Said he knew someone who lived out here. A friend from before the war. Jacob went very still. Your husband. What was his full name? William Thornton. Why? The name hit Jacob like a physical blow. William Thornton. Will. Danny's friend from back east, the one who'd visited the Harwood plantation before the war. The one who'd met Abigail when she was just a girl. Your maiden name. Jacob said, his voice barely above a whisper. Before you married, what was it? Abigail stared at him, confusion and suspicion warring in her face. Harwood, she said slowly. Abigail Harwood. Why? What does that? Your brother. Jacob had to force the words out. Daniel, Danny, he had brown hair and brown eyes, and a scar on his left hand from a hunting accident when he was 12. Abigail's face went white. How do you know that? He talked about you all the time. His baby sister, the smart one, the one who read all the books. Jacob's voice cracked. He carried a picture of you in his pocket. Showed it to everyone who'd look. I don't understand. Abigail was shaking now. How could you possibly? I was there. Jacob met her eyes, letting her see everything. The guilt, the grief, the 8 years of failed searching. I was with him when he died, at the wilderness. He took a bullet that was meant for me. The cabin went silent. Even the wind seemed to pause, holding its breath. No. Abigail shook her head. No, that's not Danny was captured. He was a prisoner of war. They put him to work as a stretcher bearer. With my unit. We became friends. Brothers almost. Jacob's hands clenched at his sides. I held him while he bled out. I heard his last words. Tears were streaming down Abigail's face. Lily watched with wide, solemn eyes, one hand pressed to her mother's arm. What did he say? Abigail whispered. At the end, what did Danny say? Jacob closed his eyes. The memory was there, vivid as yesterday. Daniel's blood on his hands. Daniel's eyes already dimming, finding his face one last time. He said, Find Abigail. Take care of her. She's got no one else. Jacob opened his eyes. I promised him I would. I swore it on everything I had. But you didn't. The words weren't accusatory. Just tired. Infinitely tired. You didn't find me. I tried. For 3 years I tried. Letters traveling, asking everyone I could find. But you'd vanished. Married, they told me. Gone west. Jacob's voice roughened. I gave up. Told myself you didn't need me, that you'd found your own way. I hadn't. Abigail's voice was barely audible. I hadn't found anything but more suffering. I know that now, and I'm sorry. I'm so goddamn sorry. The silence stretched between them, heavy with years of loss and what-ifs. Then Lily spoke, her small voice cutting through the tension like a beam of light. Uncle Danny says it's okay. She looked up at Jacob with those 2 old eyes. He says you didn't break your promise. You just kept it late. Jacob stared at the child. His throat was too tight to speak. Abigail pulled her daughter close, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. Lily, honey, Uncle Danny isn't... He's right here, Mama. Lily pointed at the empty air beside Jacob. He's been here the whole time. He's smiling. A chill ran down Jacob's spine. The lamp flame flickered though there was no draft. He says to tell you something, Mama. Lily's voice had taken on that strange resonant quality again. He says, remember the summer of the fireflies. Remember what I told you under the willow tree. Abigail went rigid. What did you say? The summer of the fireflies. The willow tree. Lily yawned hugely, the moment passing as quickly as it had come. I'm sleepy, Mama. Can I close my eyes now? Yes, baby. Abigail's voice shook. Yes, you can sleep. The child was asleep within seconds, her breathing deep and even. Abigail looked at Jacob over her daughter's head, her face a mask of shock. She couldn't know that, Abigail whispered. The summer of the fireflies, Danny and I used to catch them in jars when I was little. One night under the willow tree by the creek, he told me... She stopped, swallowing hard. He told me that no matter what happened, no matter where life took us, we'd always find our way back to each other. Jacob said nothing. There was nothing to say. I've never told anyone that story. Abigail's voice cracked. Not William, not Marcus, not even Lily. No one. Outside, the storm howled against the walls. Inside, the fire crackled softly. And somewhere in the spaces between, something unseen held its breath. I don't know what's happening, Jacob said finally. I don't understand any of this. but I made your brother a promise and I intend to keep it. He met Abigail's eyes. Marcus Thornton will not touch you or Lily again. I swear it on Daniel's grave. Abigail studied his face for a long moment. Then slowly she nodded. One night, she said. You said one night. I was wrong. Jacob rose from his chair. You stay as long as you need. As long as it takes. As long as it takes for what? For you to be safe. For Lily to be safe. He moved toward the door. I'm going to check on the animals. Get some sleep if you can. We'll talk more in the morning. Jacob. Abigail's voice stopped him at the door. Thank you. For trying to find me. For not giving up entirely. He didn't turn around. Didn't trust his voice. Get some rest, Abigail. He stepped out into the howling storm, letting the cold bite into his skin. Behind him in the warm cabin, Daniel's sister lay sleeping beside her daughter. Alive. Found. After 8 years of guilt and failure. Jacob tilted his face to the sky, letting the snow sting his cheeks. I hear you, Danny, he said to the darkness. I hear you, and this time I won't let you down. The wind screamed around him, but for just a moment he could have sworn he heard an answer. A voice distant and faint carried on the storm. I know you won't. What? 20 miles east in the town of Silver Creek, a man in an expensive wool coat stepped into the only hotel that was still open. The desk clerk looked up, startled by the sudden burst of cold air and snow. Help you, sir? I need a room. The man's voice was smooth-cultured, pleasant. And some information. Information about what? The man smiled. His teeth were very white, very even. His eyes were very cold. I'm looking for my sister-in-law and her daughter. They've been traveling alone foolishly, I'm afraid. The woman is injured. A bad ankle. The child is about 7 years old. Brown hair, green eyes. The clerk frowned. Ain't seen nobody like that tonight. Storm's been keeping folks indoors. Perhaps you could ask around. Discreetly. The man laid a gold coin on the counter. I'm willing to pay well for reliable information. The clerk's eyes widened at the coin. I could ask the boys at the saloon. They see most everyone who comes through. Excellent. Another coin joined the first. I'm particularly interested in any homesteads in the area, places where a desperate woman might seek shelter. There's McAllister's place, about 5 miles west. Coffin maker. Keeps to himself mostly. A coffin maker. The man's smile widened. How appropriate. Anyone else? Old Widow Wilson lives out near Bitter Creek. Takes in strays sometimes. Dogs, cats, runaways, all kinds. Interesting. The man pocketed this information. I think I'll start with the coffin maker. First thing tomorrow when the storm breaks. You planning to ride out there alone, Sir Rough Country? Oh, I won't be alone. The man glanced toward the door where 2 hard-faced men waited in the shadows. I never travel alone. He turned back to the clerk, and something in his expression made the man step backward involuntarily. One more thing. If anyone asks about me, anyone at all, you've never seen me. Understood. The clerk nodded rapidly. Yes, sir. Yes. Never saw you. Good man. Marcus Thornton climbed the stairs to his room, his footsteps measured and unhurried. 5 miles. A few hours' ride once the storm cleared. Abigail thought she could run from him, thought she could disappear into the wilderness with his property, his niece, his inheritance, his future. She was wrong. She'd been wrong 3 years ago when she thought William's death would set her free. Wrong 3 weeks ago when she thought she could escape without consequences. Wrong tonight thinking she'd found shelter from the storm. There was no shelter from Marcus Thornton. There was no hiding. There was no escape. Tomorrow, he would prove it. Todd. Back in Jacob's cabin, Abigail stirred in her sleep. Her hand reached out, searching, and found Lily's small fingers. Mama. Lily's voice was thick with dreams. Shh, baby. Sleep. Uncle Danny says the man from the storm will keep us safe. What man, sweetheart? The sad man. The one with the promises. Lily yawned. Uncle Danny says he's been waiting for us. For a long, long time. Abigail's eyes opened in the darkness. Across the cabin, she could see Jacob's silhouette by the window keeping watch. Waiting, she thought. Yes, I suppose he has been. She closed her eyes again, and for the first time in 3 years, she slept without dreaming of Marcus Thornton's hands around her throat. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside the coffin-maker's cabin, something had changed. Something had begun. Morning came slow and gray, the storm finally exhausted after howling through the night. Jacob hadn't slept. He'd sat by the window with his pistol in his lap, watching the darkness, listening to every creak and groan of the cabin walls. Sargent stirred first, padding across the cold floor, to press his nose against Jacob's knee. I know, boy. Jacob scratched behind the old hound's ears. Time to face the day. He rose quietly, checking on Abigail and Lily before moving to the stove. The fire had burned low during the night. He fed it fresh wood, filled the coffee pot, and set about making breakfast with the efficiency of a man long accustomed to caring for himself. Bacon, eggs, the last of his bread, toasted over the flame. That smells like heaven. Jacob turned. Abigail was awake, propped up on one elbow, watching him with those haunting eyes. How's the ankle? Hurts. She shifted, carefully wincing. But better than yesterday. You said it well. Learned during the war. Wasn't pretty work, but it kept men alive. You were a medic. Stretcher bearer. Same unit as your brother toward the end. Jacob poured coffee into 2 tin cups. We did what we had to. He brought her the coffee and a plate of food. Abigail accepted both, with hands that trembled slightly, whether from weakness or emotion, he couldn't tell. Lily's still sleeping, she said softly, glancing at her daughter's peaceful face. She hasn't slept this soundly in months. Usually the nightmares wake her. What kind of nightmares? Abigail's expression darkened. The kind a child shouldn't have. The kind that come from seeing things no child should see. Jacob didn't push. He pulled up a chair and sat down, giving her space. Tell me about Marcus, he said. Everything. I need to know what we're dealing with. Abigail was quiet for a long moment, staring into her coffee cup as if searching for answers in its depths. Marcus Thornton is the most dangerous man I've ever known, she said finally. Not because he's violent, though he is, but because he's smart, patient. He plans everything, controls everything, and he never ever loses. Everyone loses eventually. You don't understand. Abigail's voice dropped. Marcus doesn't see people as people. We're pieces on a board to him. Things to be moved, used, discarded when we're no longer useful. How'd you end up in his power? William. The name came out heavy with complicated grief. My husband. He was nothing like his brother, kind, gentle, good. We met 2 years after the war. I was alone, desperate. My family's plantation was gone, confiscated by the government. Everyone I loved was dead or scattered. Except Daniel. I didn't know Danny was dead. Not for certain. I kept hoping he'd come home, that he'd survived somehow. Abigail's voice cracked. William was the one who finally told me the truth. He'd served with men who knew what happened at the Wilderness. He told me Danny died a hero, saving another soldier's life. Jacob's throat tightened. He did. He saved mine. William never told me that part. Maybe he didn't know. Abigail took a shaky breath. We married 6 months later. I thought I was lucky. I thought I'd finally found safety. What happened? William got sick, consumption. It took him slowly over 2 years. Toward the end, he was barely conscious. Marcus came to help, that's what he called it. Help manage William's affairs, help take care of me and Lily. Her hands clenched around the coffee cup. I didn't see what he was doing at first. He was so smooth, so careful. By the time William died, Marcus had control of everything. The house, the money, William's business. And then he produced the papers. Papers. William's will. Naming Marcus as Lily's guardian. giving him authority over her inheritance over us until she comes of age. Abigail's laugh was bitter. I don't know if William actually signed those papers or if Marcus forged them. It doesn't matter now. The courts accepted them. In the eyes of the law, Marcus Thornton owns us. Jacob absorbed this in silence. He'd seen such arrangements before, men using legal documents to trap women and children, turning family into property. The abuse, he said carefully. When did it start? Gradually. So gradually I almost didn't notice at first. Abigail's voice went flat, distant. A harsh word here, a grabbed arm there. He'd apologize afterward, say he was stressed, say he didn't mean it. I believed him. I wanted to believe him. And then it got worse. He started controlling everything, what I ate, what I wore, who I spoke to. He'd fly into rages over nothing, accuse me of things I hadn't done, punish me for imagined offenses. Punish you how? Abigail didn't answer. She didn't have to. The bruises on her neck spoke loudly enough. The first time he hit me, she continued quietly, I told myself it was an accident. The second time I told myself I'd provoked him. The third time, she trailed off. The third time, Lily saw. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with horror. She was 4 years old. She walked into the room just as Marcus... Abigail's voice broke. The look on her face, I'll never forget it. That was the moment I knew I had to get us out, no matter what it took. But you stayed 3 more years. I tried to leave twice before. Abigail met his eyes, and the shame in her gaze made Jacob's chest ache. The first time he caught us at the train station, dragged us back home, broke my wrist accidentally in the process. And the second time, he had me committed, said I was having a nervous breakdown, that I was a danger to myself and Lily. I spent 6 weeks in an asylum while he told everyone I was receiving treatment. Jacob's hands curled into fists. Son of a... When I got out, he made sure I understood. If I ever tried to leave again, he'd take Lily away permanently. Have me declared unfit. He has friends, judges, doctors, lawyers, men who owe him favors. He could do it. He still could. Not if I have anything to say about it. Abigail looked at him with something like wonder. You barely know me. Why are you doing this? I told you. I made a promise. A promise to a dead man. You don't owe me anything, Jacob. Danny wouldn't want you to. Danny wanted you safe. Jacob's voice was harder than he intended. He used his last breath to make me swear it. You think I'm going to let some rich bastard with legal papers undo that? Abigail stared at him. Then slowly the ghost of a smile crossed her face. You're just as stubborn as Danny said you were. He said that in his letters, before he was captured. The smile faded. He said you were the most pig-headed Union soldier he'd ever met, but also the most honorable. Said if he had to die in that war, he hoped it would be standing next to you. Jacob looked away, his throat too tight to speak. He got his wish, I suppose. Abigail's voice was soft. He died saving you. Should have been me. The words came out rough, broken. Should have been me who took that bullet. No. Abigail reached out and touched his arm, the contact brief but warm. Don't say that. Danny made his choice. He chose to save a friend. That's who he was. And I've spent 8 years failing to honor that choice. You're honoring it now. Before Jacob could respond, a small voice interrupted. Mama, I'm hungry. Lily was sitting up in the bed, her hair tangled, her eyes still heavy with sleep. But she was smiling, a real smile, the kind Jacob suspected she didn't show often. Good morning, sweetheart. Abigail opened her arms and Lily scrambled across the bed to snuggle against her. Did you sleep well? I dreamed about Uncle Danny again. Lily yawned. He says today is important. He says we need to trust the sad man. Jacob and Abigail exchanged glances. The sad man? Abigail asked carefully. Lily pointed at Jacob. Him. Uncle Danny calls him the sad man, because he's been sad for a long time. But he says it's almost over now. The sad part, I mean. Jacob didn't know what to say to that. Fortunately, he was saved by a knock at the cabin door. Everyone froze. Abigail's face went white. Lily pressed closer to her mother. Jacob's hand went to his pistol. "Jacob McAllister." A woman's voice, sharp and familiar. "Open this door before I freeze to death out here." Jacob let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "It's Agnes, my neighbor." "You're sure?" That woman's voice could cut through a blizzard. "Yeah, I'm sure." He crossed to the door and opened it. Agnes Brennan stood on his porch, wrapped in a heavy wool coat, her gray hair escaping from beneath a practical bonnet. Her face was weathered by 67 years of hard living, but her eyes were sharp as ever. "About time." She pushed past him into the cabin. "I've been worried sick since that storm hit. Thought I'd better check." She stopped dead, her gaze falling on Abigail, and Lily huddled on the bed. "Well," Agnes said after a long moment, "this is unexpected." "Agnes, this is Abigail Thornton and her daughter Lily. They came in during the storm." Jacob closed the door against the cold. "Abigail, this is Agnes Brennan. She lives about 2 miles east." Agnes's sharp eyes took in everything: Abigail's bruised neck, her splinted ankle, Lily's too thin frame, the protective way mother and daughter clung to each other. "Thornton." Agnes repeated slowly. "Any relation to Marcus Thornton, the banker from Helena?" Abigail went rigid. "You know him? Know of him?" Agnes's expression hardened. "Man came through Silver Creek about a week ago, asking questions. Looking for a woman and child who'd run off, offering rewards for information." Jacob's hand tightened on his pistol. "He's here in the territory." "Was here. Don't know if he still is." Agnes moved toward the stove, helping herself to coffee with the ease of long familiarity. "But if he's who you're running from, you picked a hell of a place to hide. Silver Creek's a small town. Strangers get noticed." "We weren't trying to come here," Abigail said. "We were heading for the border. The storm caught us." "Providence, then." Agnes sipped her coffee, studying Abigail over the rim. "Or something like it." "Agnes." Jacob stepped forward. "Can you look at her ankle? You're better at healing than I am." "Flatterer." But Agnes was already moving toward the bed, setting down her cup and pulling back the blankets to examine Abigail's leg. Her touch was surprisingly gentle for such a sharp-tongued woman. "You set this?" she asked Jacob. "Last night." "Not bad. Could have been cleaner, but it'll heal." Agnes looked at Abigail. "You'll be off your feet for at least 2 weeks, maybe 3. Walking on it before then will only make things worse." "I can't stay off my feet for 3 weeks." Abigail's voice was tight with frustration. "Marcus is looking for us. We need to keep moving." "You move on that ankle, you won't get far. You'll collapse, and then what happens to your girl?" Abigail had no answer for that. "You'll stay here," Jacob said. It wasn't a question. "Both of you, until you're healed. And if Marcus finds us, then he'll find me standing between him and you." Agnes raised an eyebrow. "That's so. One man against Marcus Thornton and whoever he's got working for him. He won't be alone." The words came out before Jacob could stop them. "I've got neighbors. Friends." "You've got me, you mean?" Agnes snorted. "A 67-year-old widow with bad knees and a shotgun. We're quite the army." "Agnes?" "Oh, hush. I didn't say I wouldn't help." Agnes straightened up, her expression softening as she looked at Lily. "There's a network of women in these parts. We help each other when the men make trouble. Have for years." Abigail's eyes widened. "A network. Underground, you might say. Started after the war when too many widows and orphans needed help, and too few people were willing to give it." Agnes smiled grimly. "We've moved women before. Women running from husbands, fathers, brothers. Men who thought they owned them. You could help us disappear." "Maybe, if it comes to that." Agnes glanced at Jacob. But first, let's see if we can't find a way to deal with Marcus Thornton more permanently. What do you mean? I mean that man's been terrorizing his way across half the territory. He's got enemies, people he's cheated, bullied, threatened. If we can find them, unite them, we might have enough to take him down legally. The law's on his side, Abigail said bitterly. He's got documents. Papers can be challenged. Documents can be proved fraudulent. Agnes's eyes glinted. My late husband was a lawyer before the war. I learned a thing or two about how the system works and how it can be beaten. For the first time since she'd arrived, hope flickered in Abigail's expression. Real hope, not just the desperate kind that comes from having nothing else. You'd do that, for strangers. Honey, I've been fighting men like Marcus Thornton my whole life. My first husband beat me. My second husband drank himself to death. I've buried children, lost everything I owned, rebuilt from nothing twice over. Agnes reached out and took Abigail's hand. You're not strangers to me. You're sisters, and sisters look out for each other. Lily, who had been listening with wide eyes, suddenly spoke up. I like her, Mama. Uncle Danny says she's a warrior. Agnes blinked. Uncle Danny? My brother, Abigail explained quietly. He died in the war. Lily never met him, but she dreams about him sometimes. Dreams about him? Agnes's gaze sharpened. What kind of dreams? The kind where he tells her things she shouldn't know. Jacob's voice was rough. Things nobody could have told her. Agnes was silent for a long moment, studying Lily with an expression Jacob couldn't read. My grandmother had the sight, she said finally. Knew things before they happened. Saw people who weren't there. She looked at Abigail. It runs in families sometimes. Skips generations. You believe that... Abigail's voice was uncertain. Ghosts and visions and... I believe there's more to this world than what we can see and touch. Agnes shrugged. And I believe children see clearer than adults most times. We learn to blind ourselves as we grow. They haven't yet. Lily beamed. Uncle Danny says you're smart. Well, your Uncle Danny's got good taste. Agnes winked at the child, then turned businesslike. Now, first things first. We need to get you stronger, child. You're too thin by half. Jacob, you got any proper food in this place or just bachelor slop? I've got supplies. I'll bet you do. Beans and salt pork, and not a vegetable in sight. Agnes shook her head. I'll bring over some proper provisions, soup bread preserves, things that'll build up her strength. You don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. Agnes gathered her coat. I'll be back before noon. In the meantime, keep that door locked and that pistol ready. If Marcus Thornton is sniffing around, he won't wait long to make his move. She was out the door before anyone could argue, leaving a wake of determination and lavender soap behind her. Abigail stared at the closed door. Is she always like that? Pretty much. Jacob allowed himself a small smile. Agnes Brennan doesn't ask permission. She just does what needs doing. I like her. Most people do, eventually. He moved to the window, checking the yard out of habit. She's right about one thing. If Marcus is in the territory, he'll find us soon. We need to be ready. Ready how? Jacob turned to face her. Tell me everything you know about him. His habits, his weaknesses, his fears. Anything that might give us an advantage. Abigail's expression hardened. Marcus doesn't have weaknesses. That's what makes him so dangerous. Everyone has weaknesses. Not him. He's cold-controlled, always thinking 3 steps ahead. The only thing he cares about is winning. Power. Control. What about the inheritance, Lily's inheritance? It's substantial. William made good investments before he died. Lily's trust is worth a small fortune. And Marcus controls it. Until Lily turns 21. 11 more years. Abigail's voice turned bitter. 11 more years of him having power over us. Unless what? Abigail hesitated. Unless something happens to Lily. If she dies before she comes of age, the money reverts to the estate, to Marcus. Jacob went cold. You think he'd hurt her? I don't know. I don't know what he's capable of anymore. I used to think there were lines he wouldn't cross, but... She shook her head. He's been getting worse, more erratic, more violent. The mask slips more often now. Why? I don't know. Something's changed in the last year. He's desperate about something, but he won't say what. Abigail met Jacob's eyes. That's what scares me most. A desperate man is an unpredictable man. Jacob absorbed this, his mind working through possibilities. A man like Marcus, controlled and calculating, suddenly becoming erratic. Something had threatened his position, his power. Something had made him afraid. Mama, Lily's small voice interrupted. Can I pet Sergeant? The old hound had been watching the conversation from his spot by the stove, his tail thumping hopefully at the mention of his name. If it's all right with Mr. McAllister. Jacob, he corrected. And yeah, Sergeant could use some attention. Just don't let him lick your face. His breath could knock over a horse. Lily giggled, a genuine childlike sound that seemed to brighten the whole cabin. She slid off the bed and crossed to Sergeant, dropping to her knees beside him and burying her hands in his graying fur. He's so soft, she murmured, and warm. He's old, Jacob said. Like me. We're a matched set. You're not old. Lily looked up at him with those two knowing eyes. You're just tired. Uncle Danny says you've been tired for a long time. Jacob didn't know how to respond to that. The child had a way of cutting straight to the heart of things, no pretense, no social niceties. Uncle Danny talks a lot, he said finally. He's been waiting. Lily returned her attention to Sergeant. He says he couldn't rest until he knew Mama was safe. But now you're here, so maybe he can finally go. The words sent a chill down Jacob's spine. Go where? Lily shrugged. Where the light is. He showed me once in a dream. It's pretty there. Peaceful. Abigail made a soft sound, something between a sob and a laugh. Lily, sweetheart. It's okay, Mama. He's happy. He's just been worried about you for a long time. Lily scratched behind Sergeant's ears. He says to tell you he's proud of you. For being brave. For running. He says you're stronger than you know. Tears were streaming down Abigail's face now, but she didn't try to wipe them away. Thank you, baby. Thank you for telling me. Jacob turned away, giving them privacy. His own eyes were burning, and he didn't trust his voice. 8 years of guilt, 8 years of failed promises, and now this, a child speaking words from beyond the grave, offering absolution he'd never dared hope for. He moved to the window and stared out at the snow-covered landscape. Somewhere out there, Marcus Thornton was hunting. But for this moment in this small cabin, there was something like peace. It wouldn't last. Jacob knew that. The storm was coming, both literal and figurative. But for now, it was enough. The morning passed quietly after that. Agnes returned as promised, laden with baskets of food. Hearty soup, fresh bread, jars of preserves, dried meat. She fussed over Lily, pressing extra portions on her, and showed Abigail how to change the dressings on her ankle. Jacob kept watch by the window, his rifle within easy reach. You expecting trouble today? Agnes asked, noting his vigilance. I'm expecting trouble every day until this is over. Smart man. She joined him at the window, lowering her voice. I asked around in town this morning, quietly. And? Marcus Thornton's still at the hotel. Got 2 men with him, hired muscle from the look of them. They've been asking questions. About us. About you. The hermit coffin maker who lives west of town. Agnes's expression was grim. Someone told them you had visitors during the storm. Jacob's jaw tightened. Who? Does it matter? Point is they know. They'll be coming. When? Today. Tomorrow. Hard to say. Agnes glanced back at Abigail and Lily. We need a plan. I've got a plan. Oh, what's that? They come here, I shoot them. Agnes snorted. That's not a plan. That's a last resort. You got a better idea. Matter of fact, I do. Agnes pulled him further from the bed, dropping her voice even lower. I sent word to some friends this morning. Women I trust. They'll spread out, watch the roads. If Marcus and his men head this way, we'll know before they arrive. An early warning system. Something like that. Agnes studied his face. You really willing to die for these two women you just met, and her child? Jacob didn't hesitate. Yes. Why? Because I made a promise. Because it's the right thing to do. He paused. Because I've spent 8 years running from my own guilt, and I'm tired of running. Agnes nodded slowly. That's a good answer. It's the only answer I've got. Well then. Agnes squeezed his arm. Let's make sure it doesn't come to dying. There's been enough of that already. She gathered her things and headed for the door, but paused at the threshold. Jacob, that child Lily, what she says about her uncle, the dreams she has, you believe it's real? Jacob looked at Lily curled up with Sargent on a blanket by the stove, her mother dozing beside her. I don't know what I believe anymore, he said honestly, but I know what I feel. And when she talks about Daniel, when she says things no one could have told her. He shook his head. It feels true. I can't explain it better than that. Maybe that's enough. Agnes opened the door. Maybe believing isn't about explaining. Maybe it's just about trusting. She was gone before he could respond, disappearing into the gray afternoon like a ghost herself. Jacob bolted the door behind her and returned to his post by the window. The day stretched ahead, quiet and tense. Waiting. Always waiting. In the late afternoon, Lily woke from a nap with a small cry, her face pale. Mama, she whispered, scrambling toward Abigail. Mama, he's coming. Abigail's arms wrapped around her daughter. Who, baby? Who's coming? The bad man. Uncle Marcus. Lily was trembling. I saw him in my dream. He was riding through the snow, 2 men with him. They had guns. Jacob was at the window in an instant, scanning the horizon. Nothing moved in the fading light. No riders, no approaching threat. When Lily... He kept his voice calm, steady. When does he come? Tomorrow. The child's voice was barely audible. He comes tomorrow, when the sun is high. You're sure? Lily nodded, tears streaming down her face. Uncle Danny showed me. He says we need to be ready. He says... She broke off, a sob catching in her throat. What else does he say, sweetheart? Abigail stroked her daughter's hair. It's okay. You can tell us. Lily looked at Jacob with those ancient eyes in a child's face. He says the sad man has to choose. Tomorrow. He has to choose between the old promise and the new one. She swallowed hard. He says it's going to hurt, but it's the only way. Jacob felt ice in his veins. What does that mean? What choice? But Lily just shook her head, burying her face in her mother's shoulder. The moment had passed. The child was just a child again, frightened, exhausted, clinging to her mother for comfort. Jacob turned back to the window, his mind racing. Tomorrow. Marcus was coming tomorrow. And something was going to happen. Something that would force Jacob to choose. He didn't know what it meant. Didn't know what choice he'd be called to make. But as the sun set over the Montana hills, painting the snow blood red, Jacob McAllister made a silent vow. Whatever came tomorrow, whatever choice he faced, he would not fail. Not this time. He'd made too many promises to break another one. Jacob didn't sleep that night. He sat in the darkness with his rifle across his knees, listening to the wind whisper against the cabin walls. Abigail and Lily lay together on the bed, the child curled tight against her mother, both finally surrendered to exhausted sleep. Tomorrow. Marcus was coming tomorrow. The words echoed in Jacob's mind, circling like vultures. He'd faced death before, faced it at Antietam, at Gettysburg, at the Wilderness, where Daniel had bled out in his arms. He'd looked into the barrel of Confederate rifles and felt the hot breath of artillery shells. None of that scared him anymore. What scared him was failing again. The sad man has to choose. Between the old promise and the new one. What did that mean? What choice would he be forced to make? Jacob turned the words over and over, searching for meaning. The old promise was clear enough, Daniel's dying request to find and protect Abigail. But the new promise. What new promise had he made? He looked at the sleeping figures on the bed. At Abigail's face, peaceful now in sleep, the worry lines smoothed away. At Lily's small hand, clutching her mother's dress, even in dreams. Maybe the new promise wasn't something he'd spoken aloud. Maybe it was something deeper, something that had taken root in his chest, without his permission. A promise to himself. To them. To the future he'd stopped believing in 8 years ago. Sargent whined softly at his feet. "I know, boy." Jacob reached down to scratch the old hound's ears. "I know." The first gray light of dawn crept through the window. Jacob rose stiffly, his joints protesting the long night in the chair. He crossed to the stove and built up the fire, put coffee on to boil, moved through the familiar routine of morning. But nothing about this morning was routine. Abigail stirred first, her eyes finding him immediately. "You didn't sleep," she said. "Couldn't." "Neither could I. Not really." She sat up, carefully mindful of her ankle. "I kept dreaming about him. Marcus, standing over me, telling me I could never escape. He was wrong." "Was he?" Abigail's voice was hollow. "Every time I've run, he's found me. Every time I've tried to fight, he's won. Maybe some cages can't be broken." "That ain't true." Jacob brought her coffee, pressing the warm cup into her hands. "You got away. You made it here. You're still fighting. And what happens today when he comes? We face him, together. You could die. I've been dying for 8 years, just been too stubborn to lie down." Jacob met her eyes. "But that little girl of yours, she gave me something I ain't had in a long time." "What's that?" "A reason to live." Abigail stared at him, her lips parting slightly. Something passed between them. Something unspoken, fragile, new. "Jacob." "Mama." Lily's sleepy voice interrupted. "Is it morning?" The moment broke. Abigail turned to her daughter, smoothing the tangled hair from her face. "Yes, baby, it's morning." "Is today the day?" The question hung in the air, heavy with dread. "Yes," Jacob answered when Abigail couldn't. "Today's the day." Lily nodded solemnly, looking far older than her 7 years. "Uncle Danny says to tell you something." "What's that?" "He says the choice isn't what you think it is. He says when the moment comes you'll understand." She rubbed her eyes. "He also says he's proud of you, for not giving up, for keeping your promise even when you thought you'd broken it." Jacob's throat tightened. "Tell him—" He stopped, not sure how to finish. "You don't have to tell him. He already knows." Lily smiled a small, sad smile. "He's always known." Agnes arrived an hour later, her face grim. "They're coming," she said without preamble. "My girls spotted them leaving town 30 minutes ago. 3 men on horseback heading west. They'll be here within the hour." Jacob was already checking his rifle, ensuring it was loaded and ready. "How are they armed?" "Pistols, 1 rifle that we saw." Agnes pulled a shotgun from beneath her coat. "I brought this. Figured you could use the backup." "Agnes, you don't have to." "The hell I don't." Her eyes flashed. "You think I'm gonna stand by while some rich bully terrorizes a woman and child? I've been fighting men like Marcus Thornton since before you were born, Jacob McAllister. I ain't stopping now." Despite everything, Jacob felt something loosen in his chest. He wasn't alone. For the first time in 8 years, he wasn't alone. "Thank you." "Save your thanks for after." Agnes moved to the window, positioning herself with a clear view of the approach. "Abigail, can you use a gun?" "I can." Abigail's voice was steady. "William taught me years ago." Jacob handed her his pistol. "It kicks hard. Use both hands." "I know." She checked the chamber with practiced ease. "Marcus doesn't know I can shoot. He thought I was helpless." "He thought wrong." "Mama." Lily's voice was small but determined. What should I do? Abigail knelt beside her daughter, taking her face in both hands. You stay hidden, baby. No matter what happens, no matter what you hear, you stay hidden. Promise me. But, promise me, Lily. The child's eyes welled with tears, but she nodded. I promise. There's a root cellar beneath the floor. Jacob pointed to a trapdoor in the corner. It's cold and dark, but it's safe. Whatever happens up here, you stay down there until one of us comes to get you. Lily threw her arms around his waist, hugging him tight. Please don't die, she whispered against his chest. Please. Jacob knelt down, meeting her eyes. I'm gonna do my best. And whatever happens, you remember what your Uncle Danny said. The choice ain't what I think it is. When the moment comes, I'll understand. You will. Lily touched his face with one small hand. You're brave, Jacob. Braver than you know. He lifted the trapdoor and helped her down into the darkness. Her pale face looked up at him from the shadows, trusting, terrified. I'll come back for you, he promised, one way or another. The trapdoor closed. Jacob turned to face the women, Agnes at the window. Abigail propped against the wall with the pistol in her lap. They're coming, Agnes said quietly. I can see them on the ridge. Jacob moved to join her. 3 riders, just as Lily had said. Even at this distance, he could pick out Marcus Thornton, the expensive coat, the rigid posture, the way he sat his horse like a man accustomed to owning everything he surveyed. I'm going out to meet them, Jacob said. Like hell you are. Agnes grabbed his arm. You go out there alone, they'll gun you down. They won't. Not yet. Jacob gently removed her hand. Marcus wants Abigail and Lily. He wants to do this legal if he can drag them back with papers and authority. Killing me outright would complicate that. And if you're wrong, then you shoot them from the window. Abigail pushed herself up, wincing at the pain in her ankle. Jacob, don't. Please. He'll kill you just to prove he can. Maybe. Jacob checked his rifle one last time. But maybe not. And either way, I'm not hiding while he threatens you. This isn't your fight. Yes, it is. He turned to face her. It became my fight the moment you knocked on my door. The moment I saw Daniel's eyes looking back at me. The moment I realized God or fate or whatever you want to call it had given me a second chance. A second chance at what? At keeping my promise. At being the man Daniel believed I was. Jacob's voice roughened. I've been dead inside for 8 years, Abigail. Walking around breathing, but dead where it counts. You and Lily, you woke something up. Something I thought I'd buried for good. Tears spilled down Abigail's cheeks. And if you die today, for real this time, then at least I'll die fighting for something that matters. He crossed to the door before she could argue further. His hand was on the latch when her voice stopped him. Jacob. He turned. Abigail stood there, pale and trembling, but with a fire in her eyes that reminded him so much of Daniel, it hurt. Come back, she said simply. Whatever happens out there, you come back. That's an order. Despite everything, Jacob smiled. Yes, ma'am. He stepped out into the cold morning air. The 3 riders had reached the edge of his property. They sat their horses in a line, watching him approach with expressions ranging from cold calculation to barely concealed menace. Marcus Thornton dismounted, first handing his reins to one of his men. He was younger than Jacob had expected, late 30s maybe, with handsome features and the kind of well-groomed appearance that came from money and servants. But his eyes were wrong, cold and flat, like a snake's. Mr. McAllister. Marcus's voice was smooth, cultured. Thank you for coming out. I was hoping we could handle this like civilized men. Civilized? Jacob stopped 10 feet from the group, his rifle held casually but ready. That's an interesting word coming from a man who beats women and children. Something flickered in Marcus's expression, anger quickly suppressed. I see my sister-in-law has been filling your head with stories. She's quite creative when it comes to playing the victim. The bruises on her neck ain't creative. Neither is her broken ankle. Abigail is prone to accidents. a consequence of her unstable condition. Marcus spread his hands in a gesture of reasonableness. I'm not here to argue, Mr. McAllister. I'm simply here to retrieve my family. They ain't your family. Legally, they are. I have documents. I don't give a damn about your documents. Marcus's mask slipped just for a moment. His eyes hardened, his jaw tightened. You're making a mistake, he said, his voice losing some of its polish. I came here hoping to resolve this peacefully, but if you insist on interfering in matters that don't concern you, they concern me. Why? What are they to you, a stranger and her brat who stumbled onto your doorstep? Marcus stepped closer, studying Jacob's face. Or is there something more, perhaps you've developed? Feelings for my brother's widow. Jacob said nothing. Ah. Marcus smiled a thin, cruel expression. I see. The lonely hermit playing savior to the damsel in distress. How romantic. How pathetic. I ain't playing at anything. No. Then step aside. Let me take what's mine, and I'll leave you to your miserable little existence. Marcus's voice dropped. Fight me, and I will destroy you. I will burn this cabin to the ground. I will make sure everyone in the territory knows you as a kidnapper, a predator who preys on vulnerable women. Your name will be ruined, your life forfeit. All for what? A woman you've known for 2 days. 3 days, Jacob corrected. And yeah, all for that. Marcus stared at him for a long moment. Then he laughed a sharp, ugly sound. You're either very brave or very stupid. I haven't decided which. Maybe both. Very well. Marcus stepped back, gesturing to his men. James, Carter, retrieve Mrs. Thornton and my niece, if Mr. McAllister interferes. He paused, letting the threat hang. The 2 hired men dismounted, hands resting on their pistols. They were big, rough-looking types, the kind of men who did dirty work for money and didn't ask questions. Jacob raised his rifle. First man who takes another step toward that cabin dies. Everyone froze. You're outnumbered 3-1, Marcus said, his voice tight. You can't possibly. I can drop one of you before anyone clears leather, maybe 2 if I'm fast. Jacob's voice was calm, steady. Question is, which one of you wants to be first? The hired men exchanged uncertain glances. They'd signed on for easy work, intimidating a lone woman and her child. Nobody had mentioned gunfights. This is absurd. Marcus's composure was cracking. You're one man, one aging, washed up. He ain't alone. Agnes's voice rang out from the cabin window, followed by the distinctive sound of a shotgun being cocked. And neither am I, Abigail added, appearing at the other window with Jacob's pistol aimed squarely at Marcus's chest. For the first time, real fear flickered in Marcus's eyes. He'd expected a simple retrieval, a helpless woman, an isolated cabin, a single interfering stranger. He hadn't expected resistance. This changes nothing, he said, but his voice had lost its certainty. I have the law on my side. I have papers, documents, the authority of the courts. Papers can be challenged. A new voice joined the confrontation. Jacob turned. Coming up the road on horseback was a group of 5 women. Agnes's network. They rode in formation, their faces grim and determined, and at their head was a woman Jacob didn't recognize, tall, gray-haired, dressed in black. Judge Hartley, Marcus said, his face going pale. What are you doing here? My daughter sent word. The woman Judge Hartley dismounted with the ease of long practice. She said there was a woman in trouble, a child in danger. I came to see for myself. This is a family matter. A private. Nothing is private when abuse is involved, Mr. Thornton. The judge's voice was cold. I've heard rumors about you for years. Whispers from servants, from neighbors. I never had proof enough to act. Her eyes swept over the scene, the armed men, the terrified women, the standoff on Jacob's front yard. I believe I have proof now. This woman is mentally unstable. She's made false accusations. I've made no accusations. Abigail's voice rang out clear and strong. I've only told the truth. About what you did to me. About what you did to William. Marcus went rigid. What I did to William, he died of consumption. Everyone knows. Everyone knows what you told them. Abigail emerged from the cabin limping badly but refusing to falter. But I know different. I know William didn't just get sick. I know you helped him along. The silence was deafening. That's a serious accusation, Judge Hartley said quietly. I have proof. Abigail reached into her dress and pulled out a small leather journal. William kept a diary. In his final weeks when he was too weak to speak, he wrote about Marcus visiting him at night, about the tea Marcus made him drink, about how much worse he felt after every visit. Marcus's face had gone the color of old ash. That's a forgery, a fabrication. It's in William's own hand, his own words. Abigail held up the journal. He suspected toward the end. He just didn't have time to tell anyone. You're lying. You made this up to... There's more. Lily's voice, small but clear, came from behind them. Everyone turned. The child stood in the cabin doorway, her face pale but determined. She'd broken her promise to stay hidden, but something had driven her up from the root cellar, something she couldn't ignore. Lily, go back inside, Abigail said sharply. I can't, Mama. Uncle Danny says I have to tell them. Lily stepped forward, her eyes fixed on Marcus. I know about the other man, the one you hurt before Uncle William. Marcus stumbled backward as if she'd struck him. What are you talking about? Mr. Harrison, grandfather's business partner. Lily's voice took on that strange, distant quality. You were angry because he found out what you did, how you stole money from his company, how you cheated him. This is insane. She's a child. She can't possibly. You hit him with a poker, in the study when everyone else was asleep. Lily's eyes had gone unfocused, seeing something no one else could see. He tried to run, but you caught him by the stairs. You pushed him. He fell all the way down. His head hit the banister. Marcus was shaking now, his composed facade completely shattered. And then you buried him. Lily's voice dropped to a whisper. Behind the old carriage house, under the rose bushes. You planted them yourself the next spring. Mama's roses, you told everyone, in memory of Mama. No. Marcus's voice was barely audible. No, that's not, she couldn't know. The watch. Lily continued relentless. You kept his watch. Gold with his initials inside. J.H., you still have it. In your desk in a red leather box. How? Marcus screamed, his control finally snapping completely. How could you possibly know that? Who told you? Uncle Danny told me. He sees everything now. He says the dead don't keep secrets. Marcus lunged toward Lily. You little... Jacob moved faster than he'd moved in years. His rifle butt caught Marcus square in the chest, driving him backward. The man stumbled, fell, and before he could rise, Jacob had the barrel pressed against his throat. Stay down, Jacob growled. The two hired men had their hands up, backing away from the scene. Whatever they'd signed on for, it wasn't this: murder accusations, ghostly revelations, complete chaos. We ain't part of this, one of them said quickly. He just paid us to help collect his family, that's all. Then ride out, Judge Hartley ordered. Now, and if I ever see either of you in my territory again, you'll answer for it. They didn't need to be told twice. Within seconds, they were mounted and riding hard back toward Silver Creek, leaving Marcus alone on the frozen ground. You can't prove any of this. Marcus gasped, his eyes wild. It's the word of a child. Dreams and nonsense. No court would... Then you won't mind if we dig up those rose bushes. Judge Hartley's voice was ice. You won't mind if we search your study for a gold watch with the initials J.H. Marcus's face crumpled. In that moment, Jacob saw him clearly for the first time. Not a monster, not a devil, just a man. A weak, broken, twisted man who'd spent his whole life taking from others because he didn't know how to build anything himself. It didn't make him less dangerous, but it made him less fearsome. It's over, Marcus, Abigail said, limping forward to stand beside Jacob. All of it. The lies, the control, the fear. It ends here. Marcus looked up at her, and something in his expression shifted. Desperation. hatred. The cornered animal realizing it had nowhere left to run. "You think you've won," he hissed. "You think this changes anything? I still have lawyers. I still have friends. I'll fight this in every court in the territory. I'll drag your name through the mud. I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of woman you really are." What kind of woman is that? The kind who abandons her family, who runs off with the first man who shows her attention, who corrupts her own daughter with ghost stories and lies. Marcus's voice rose to a shout. "You're nothing, Abigail. You've always been nothing. William only married you out of pity, and I—" "That's enough." Jacob pressed the rifle barrel harder against Marcus's throat. "One more word, and I'll end this the old-fashioned way." Marcus fell silent, but his eyes burned with impotent rage. "Get up." Jacob stepped back, keeping the rifle trained on him. "Judge Hartley, I think you'd better take custody of this man." "With pleasure." The judge gestured to two of the women who'd ridden with her. "Bind his hands. We'll escort him back to town and send word to Helena. There are questions that need answering." As they secured Marcus's wrists, Lily crossed the yard to stand beside her mother. Abigail pulled her close, tears streaming down her face. "You were so brave, baby," she whispered. So brave." "Uncle Danny was with me." Lily looked up at Jacob. "He says to tell you you made the right choice." Jacob frowned. "What choice I didn't?" "Yes, you did." Lily smiled, that strange, knowing smile that seemed so much older than her years. "When Uncle Marcus was on the ground. When you had the rifle at his throat. You could have killed him. Part of you wanted to." Jacob's blood went cold. She was right. In that moment, with Marcus beneath him, with all the rage and protective fury flooding through his veins, he could have pulled the trigger, could have ended it once and for all. He'd chosen not to. "The old promise was to protect Mama," Lily continued. "To keep her safe no matter what. But the new promise, the one you made to yourself, was to be a good man. The kind of man Uncle Danny believed you were. And if I'd killed Marcus? Then you'd have kept one promise and broken the other. You'd have protected us, but you'd have lost yourself." Lily reached up and took his hand. "Uncle Danny says that's what he really wanted all along. Not just for you to save Mama, but for you to save yourself too." Jacob couldn't speak. His throat was too tight, his eyes burning with tears he hadn't shed in 8 years. "He's going now," Lily said softly. "Uncle Danny, he says his work is done." "Going where?" "Where the light is. He showed me, remember." Lily's own eyes were glistening. "He's been waiting such a long time. Watching over Mama, watching over you. Making sure you found each other." "Lily." "He says goodbye, Mama." Lily turned to Abigail, who was openly weeping. "He says he loves you. He says he's so proud of you, and he says—" Her voice broke. "He says he'll see you again someday, when it's time." Abigail dropped to her knees, pulling her daughter into a fierce embrace. Their sobs mingled with the cold morning air. Grief and relief and love, all tangled together. Jacob stood apart watching them. His heart ached with an emotion he couldn't name, something between sorrow and joy, loss and hope. "Goodbye, Daniel," he thought. "Rest easy now." And somewhere on the edge of hearing, he could have sworn he heard a voice respond, "Thank you, Jacob, for everything." Then it was gone. The presence he hadn't even realized was there. The ghost, the guardian, whatever Daniel had become, faded away like morning mist. It was over. Judge Hartley's women loaded Marcus onto a horse. His hands bound his face blank with shock. He didn't resist, didn't struggle. Whatever fight had been in him seemed to have drained away completely. "I'll send word when we know more," the judge told Jacob. "About the investigation, the charges." "What happens to them?" Jacob nodded toward Abigail and Lily. "That depends on what we find. If Mr. Harrison's body is where the child says it is." The judge shook her head. "Marcus Thornton will hang Mr. McAllister, and all his legal claims will die with him. And if it's not there, then we'll find another way. But one way or another, those two are free. Judge Hartley mounted her horse. "Take care of them, Mr. McAllister. They deserve better than what life has given them so far." "Yes, ma'am." The party rode away, taking Marcus with them. Jacob watched until they disappeared over the ridge, then turned back to the cabin. Agnes stood on the porch, her shotgun still in hand, her face creased with exhaustion. "Well," she said, "that was more excitement than I've had in 20 years. "Thank you, Agnes, for everything." "Don't thank me yet. There's still a lot of mess to clean up." She nodded toward Abigail and Lily, still huddled together in the yard. "Starting with those two. They're gonna need time, Jacob. Time to heal, time to trust, time to believe it's really over." "I know." "You ready for that? The patience, the gentleness, all of it." Agnes fixed him with those sharp old eyes. "You've been alone a long time. Living with ghosts is easier than living with people." "Maybe." Jacob looked at Abigail, at the tears on her face, the strength in her spine, the way she held her daughter like she'd never let go. "But maybe it's time to start living with people again." Agnes smiled a rare, genuine smile that transformed her weathered face. "That's a good answer." She clapped him on the shoulder. "I'll check on you tomorrow. Make sure nobody's killed anybody." She mounted her horse and rode away, leaving Jacob alone with Abigail and Lily. For a long moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then Lily looked up, her tear-streaked face somehow radiant. "Can we go inside now?" she asked. "I'm cold, and Sergeant probably misses me." Jacob laughed a real laugh, rusty from disuse, but genuine. "Yeah," he said. "Let's go inside." He crossed to where Abigail knelt in the snow and offered her his hand. She looked up at him, her eyes still red from crying, but something new shining in their depths. "Is it really over?" she asked. "This part is." He pulled her gently to her feet. "The rest, that's just beginning." Abigail held his gaze for a long moment. Then slowly she smiled. "I think I'd like that," she said softly. "A new beginning." Together the three of them walked back toward the cabin. Lily ran ahead, eager to reunite with Sergeant. Abigail leaned on Jacob's arm, her injured ankle making each step difficult. But she was smiling. They both were. Behind them, the sun broke through the clouds, spilling golden light across the snow-covered valley. It was going to be a beautiful day. The days that followed were strange and quiet, like the world holding its breath after a storm. Jacob found himself moving through a life he no longer recognized, his cabin suddenly full of sounds and smells and presences that had been absent for 8 long years. Lily's laughter rang through the rooms. Abigail's soft humming drifted from the kitchen. Sergeant's tail thumped against the floorboards whenever anyone paid him attention. The silence that had been Jacob's constant companion retreated to the corners, watching, waiting. On the third morning, Jacob woke before dawn as always. He lay in the narrow cot he'd set up by the stove, listening to the soft breathing of Abigail and Lily in his bed. They'd argued about the sleeping arrangements at first. "I can't take your bed," Abigail had insisted. "You've already given us so much." "It ain't up for debate. Your ankle needs proper rest, and Lily needs her mama close." "But where will you sleep?" "I've slept in worse places than my own floor. Trust me." She'd relented finally, though her eyes had held something complicated. Gratitude mixed with guilt, mixed with something else he couldn't name. Now in the gray pre-dawn light, Jacob rose quietly and built up the fire. He put coffee on, started breakfast, moved through the familiar routine with unfamiliar care, trying not to wake them, trying to give them the rest they so desperately needed. "You don't have to do that, you know." He turned. Abigail was awake, watching him from the bed, her dark hair loose around her shoulders. "Do what?" "Tiptoe around like a ghost in your own home. We're not so fragile that a little noise will break us." Jacob allowed himself a small smile. "Force of habit. Been alone a long time." "So you keep saying." Abigail pushed herself up carefully, mindful of her ankle. "How long exactly?" "Since the war. 8 years, give or take." No family, no wife. Had a girl once, before I enlisted. She married someone else while I was away. Jacob shrugged, the old pain distant now, more memory than wound. Can't blame her. I wasn't the same man who left. The war changed you. The war changed everyone. He poured 2 cups of coffee and brought one to her. Some of us just didn't know how to change back. Abigail accepted the cup, her fingers brushing his. The contact was brief, accidental, but it sent a jolt through Jacob's chest. Thank you, she said softly. For the coffee. For everything. You keep thanking me. There's no need. There's every need. Abigail's eyes met his, serious and searching. You risked your life for us, Jacob, for people you didn't know. Most men wouldn't have done that. Most men didn't make a promise to your brother. Is that the only reason? The promise? The question hung between them, weighted with meaning. Jacob didn't know how to answer. The promise had been the beginning, yes, but somewhere along the way, it had become something more. Something he wasn't ready to name. Mama. Lily stirred beside her mother, rubbing her eyes. Is it morning? Yes, baby. Time to wake up. The moment passed, the question left unanswered. But Jacob felt Abigail's gaze on him as he turned back to the stove, and he knew she hadn't forgotten. Agnes arrived mid-morning with news. They found him, she announced without preamble, stomping the snow from her boots. Harrison, right where the child said he'd be. Abigail's hand flew to her mouth. Oh, God. Bones and a gold watch with the initials J.H. Agnes shook her head grimly. Marcus Thornton is finished. Judge Hartley's already sent word to Helena. They're assembling a tribunal. He'll hang? Jacob asked. Most likely. Murder, fraud, assault, the list keeps growing. Agnes looked at Abigail. You're free, honey. Really and truly free. Whatever papers Marcus had, whatever legal claims he made, they're worthless now. A murderer can't hold guardianship over anyone. Abigail sank into a chair, her face pale. Lily climbed into her lap, wrapping thin arms around her mother's neck. It's over, Mama, Lily whispered. I told you it would be. You did, baby. You did. Agnes pulled Jacob aside while Abigail composed herself. There's something else, she said quietly. The inheritance. William Thornton's estate. Lily's trust, it all reverts to them now. They're going to be wealthy, Jacob. Very wealthy. Jacob absorbed this. That's good. They can start fresh. Go anywhere they want. Is that what you want? For them to go? What I want doesn't matter. What matters is what's best for them. Agnes studied his face with those sharp old eyes. You're a fool, Jacob McAllister. A noble fool, but a fool nonetheless. What's that supposed to mean? It means that woman looks at you like you hung the moon and you're too blind or too stubborn to see it. Agnes patted his arm. Don't let the past steal your future. You've earned some happiness. Take it. She left before he could respond, disappearing into the cold morning with a wave and a knowing smile. That afternoon, while Lily napped with Sargent curled at her feet, Abigail asked Jacob to help her outside. I need air, she said. Real air. I've been cooped up too long. Your ankle is healing. Agnes said so herself. Abigail extended her hand. Please, Jacob, I need to feel the sun on my face. He couldn't refuse her. He wrapped her in blankets, helped her to the porch, settled her in the chair where he'd spent so many nights keeping watch. It's beautiful here, she said, looking out at the snow-covered valley. Peaceful. It can be, when the weather cooperates. Is that why you chose it, the peace? I chose it because it was far from everything. Far from people, from memories, from the world I couldn't face anymore. Jacob leaned against the porch railing. Thought if I went far enough the ghosts wouldn't follow. Did it work? No, they followed anyway. They always do. Abigail was quiet for a moment. Daniel followed me too, even after I tried to forget him. Even after Marcus made me hide away everything that reminded me of him. You couldn't forget your own brother. I tried. God help me, I tried. Her voice cracked. It hurt too much to remember. The way he laughed, the way he teased me, the way he always made me feel safe. After he died, after everything fell apart, I thought if I could just stop remembering, stop feeling, maybe the pain would stop too. Did it? No. It just turned into something else. Something cold and hard. Abigail looked at her hands twisted in her lap. Marcus took advantage of that. He found me when I was empty, and he filled me up with fear instead of love. I let him because I didn't think I deserved anything better. That's not true. Isn't it? Her eyes found his bright with unshed tears. I married a man I didn't love because I was desperate. I stayed with his brother because I was afraid. I let Lily see things no child should see because I was too weak to leave. You're not weak. Jacob's voice was fiercer than he intended. You survived. You got your daughter out. You walked on a broken ankle for 3 days rather than give up. I almost didn't make it. But you did. That's what matters. He moved closer, kneeling beside her chair so their eyes were level. Listen to me, Abigail. You are the strongest woman I've ever met. What you've endured, what you've overcome, most people would have crumbled. You didn't. You fought. I didn't feel like I was fighting. I felt like I was drowning. Sometimes that's what fighting looks like. Just keeping your head above water. Just taking one more breath when everything in you wants to sink. Tears spilled down Abigail's cheeks. How do you know that? Because I've been drowning for 8 years. Jacob's voice roughened. Since Daniel died, since I broke my promise, I've been going through the motions of living without actually being alive, building coffins for the dead because I felt more kinship with them than with the living. And now? Now. He hesitated, searching for words. Now I feel like maybe I've found something to hold on to. Something that might keep me from sinking. Abigail reached out and touched his face, her fingers cool against his weathered skin. Jacob. I don't expect anything, he said quickly. I know you've been through hell. I know you need time to heal. I'm not asking for, what if I am? He stared at her, not understanding. What if I'm asking? Abigail's voice trembled, but her gaze was steady. What if I'm tired of being afraid? What if I want to know what it feels like to be with someone who sees me as a person, not a possession? Abigail. I know it's soon. I know I should wait, should be careful, should protect myself. She laughed softly, sadly. I've spent years protecting myself, and where did it get me? Running through a blizzard with a broken ankle, praying to find shelter before my daughter froze to death. You found shelter. I found you. Her thumb traced the line of his jaw. And maybe that's what I've been looking for all along. Not just a place to hide, but a person to stand with. Jacob covered her hand with his own, pressing it against his cheek. His heart was pounding so hard he was sure she could hear it. I'm not a good bet, he said. I'm old. Broken. I have nightmares that wake me up screaming. I don't know how to be around people anymore. Neither do I. I might fail you. I might not be able to give you what you need. You've already given me more than anyone else ever has. Abigail leaned forward, closing the distance between them. You gave me hope, Jacob. You gave my daughter a safe place to sleep. You gave me back my brother in a way I never expected. Daniel. Daniel sent you to us. I believe that now. Whatever Lily sees, whatever connection she has, it's real, and it led us here to you. Her eyes searched his face. Don't you see? We were always meant to find each other. The promise you made wasn't just about protecting me. It was about bringing us together. Jacob wanted to argue, to list all the reasons this was a bad idea, all the ways he might disappoint her. But looking into those eyes, Daniel's eyes, but also Abigail's own, full of pain and hope, and something that might be the beginning of love, he couldn't find the words. Instead, he leaned forward and kissed her. It was gentle, tentative, a question more than a statement. Abigail's hand slid from his cheek to the back of his neck, pulling him closer, deepening the kiss into an answer. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Jacob rested his forehead against hers. "I don't deserve this," he whispered. "Maybe not, but you've got it anyway." Abigail smiled a real smile that lit up her whole face. "Stop arguing and accept it." "Yes, ma'am." They sat together on the porch as the afternoon light faded, hands intertwined, saying little but meaning everything. For the first time in 8 years, Jacob felt the ice around his heart beginning to thaw. The days blurred together after that, each one a small step toward healing. Abigail's ankle improved steadily under Agnes's care. Within a week, she was walking short distances without the crutches. Within 2 weeks, she was helping Jacob with chores, insisting on contributing despite his protests. "I won't be useless," she told him firmly. "I've spent too long being dependent on others. If I'm going to stay here, I'm going to earn my keep." "You don't have to earn anything." "I know I don't have to. I want to." She fixed him with a look that brooked no argument. "Let me have this, Jacob. Let me feel useful again." He relented, giving her tasks that wouldn't strain her healing ankle, mending clothes, preparing meals, organizing the chaos of his bachelor existence. She attacked each job with fierce determination, and slowly the cabin began to transform. Curtains appeared in the windows. The floor was swept clean. The endless clutter of a man living alone was sorted, organized, made orderly. "You're civilizing me," Jacob observed one evening, looking around at the changed space. Abigail laughed. "Someone had to. This place was a disaster." "I knew where everything was." "Did you? Where's the hammer?" Jacob opened his mouth to answer, then closed it. He had no idea. "Exactly." Abigail pointed to a hook by the door, where the hammer now hung in plain sight. "Civilization has its benefits." Lily, meanwhile, flourished in ways that made Jacob's chest ache. The haunted look gradually faded from her eyes, replaced by the natural curiosity of a child finally free to be a child. She followed Jacob everywhere, peppering him with questions about his work, his animals, his past. "Why do you make coffins?" she asked one afternoon, watching him plane a board smooth. "Because people die, and they need somewhere to rest." "Doesn't it make you sad? Making boxes for dead people?" Jacob considered the question. "Sometimes. But it's important work. Everyone deserves dignity, even at the end." "Uncle Danny says you made a beautiful coffin for a little boy once. A boy who died of fever. He says you carved angels on the lid, even though nobody asked you to." Jacob's hands stilled. He remembered that coffin remembered the grieving parents, the tiny body, the overwhelming urge to do something, anything, to ease their pain. "How does your Uncle Danny know about that?" Lily shrugged. "He knows lots of things. He watches over people." "I thought he went away, to the light." "Mostly he did, but sometimes he checks on us, to make sure we're okay." Lily smiled. "He says he's happy. He says he can rest now because you kept your promise." Jacob had to look away, blinking hard against the burning in his eyes. "I'm glad," he managed. "I'm glad he's at peace." "Me too." Lily patted his arm. "Can I help you sand the wood? I'll be very careful." "Sure, little one. Come on over." They worked together in companionable silence. The old man and the child building something new from the bones of the old. Word came from Silver Creek at the end of the second week. Agnes delivered the news herself, her face carefully neutral. The tribunals reached its verdict. Marcus Thornton has been found guilty of murder, fraud, and assault. He's been sentenced to hang. Abigail received the news in silence, her face pale but composed. "When?" she asked finally. "3 days from now. They've asked if you want to be there." "No." The word came out sharp, immediate. "No, I don't want to see him again. Ever. Nobody would blame you if you did. Some folks need to see justice done to believe it's real." "I believe it." Abigail's hands were trembling, but her voice was steady. "And I won't give him the satisfaction of my presence. He's taken enough from me. He doesn't get my final moments too." Agnes nodded, unsurprised. "There's more. The lawyers have been sorting through Marcus's affairs. Turns out he was in debt up to his eyeballs. The money he was so desperate to control Lily's inheritance, he needed it to cover his losses. Some bad investments, some gambling debts. He was weeks away from ruin when you ran. That's why he was so desperate to find us." "That's why." Agnes looked at Jacob. "The lawyers also found William's real will, the one Marcus hid. William left everything to Abigail directly with provisions for Lily's care. No guardian needed, no middleman with control." Abigail let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "William knew. He knew what Marcus was." "Seems like it. He tried to protect you in his way. But Marcus found the will first. He destroyed it and substituted his own version." "That's the working theory. Either way, the courts are recognizing the original document. Everything belongs to you and Lily now. Free and clear." Jacob watched Abigail absorb this news, watched the play of emotions across her face. Relief, grief, anger, and underneath it all, a fragile, growing peace. "What will you do?" Agnes asked gently. "With the money, the property, I don't know yet." Abigail looked at Jacob. "I haven't thought that far ahead." "You've got time now. All the time in the world." Agnes gathered her things. "I'll leave you to discuss it. Let me know if you need anything." After she left, silence stretched through the cabin. Lily had gone out to play with Sargent, her laughter drifting through the window like music. "You could go anywhere," Jacob said at last. "With that kind of money. Back east, maybe. Start fresh somewhere civilized. Is that what you think I should do?" "I think you should do whatever makes you happy." Abigail crossed the room to stand before him. "What if staying here makes me happy? Here." Jacob gestured at the rough cabin, the empty valley, the isolated life he'd built. "This isn't what you're used to. You deserve better." "Don't tell me what I deserve." Her voice was soft but firm. "I've had men telling me what I deserve my whole life, what I need, what's best for me. I'm done with that. I'm not trying to—" "I know you're not. I know you're trying to be noble to give me an out." Abigail took his hands in hers. "But I don't want an out, Jacob. I want to stay. Here. With you. You barely know me." "I know enough. I know you're kind when you try to be gruff. I know you love that ridiculous old dog. I know you built angels into a coffin for a child you'd never met just because you wanted to give his parents some comfort." Abigail. "I know you kept a promise for 8 years even when you thought you'd failed. I know you risked your life for strangers because it was the right thing to do." Her eyes met his, unwavering. "What else do I need to know?" Jacob pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her as if she might disappear. "I'm scared." He admitted the words muffled against her hair. "I'm scared I'll mess this up. Scared I'll hurt you somehow. I'm scared too, but I'm more scared of losing you, because we were both too afraid to try. Mama, Jacob, look what I found." They broke apart as Lily burst through the door, her face flushed with excitement. In her cupped hands, she carried something small and white. "It's a snowdrop," she exclaimed. "Growing right up through the snow, Agnes says they're the first flowers of spring." Abigail knelt down, examining the delicate bloom. "It's beautiful, sweetheart." "Can we plant it in a pot so we can watch it grow?" "Of course we can." Lily beamed, then turned to Jacob with sudden seriousness. "Uncle Danny says snowdrops mean hope. He says they remind us that even in the coldest winter, spring is coming." Jacob looked at the tiny flower, at the child who held it so carefully, at the woman who had walked into his life through a blizzard and turned everything upside down. "Your Uncle Danny is a wise man," he said softly. "He says you're wise too, just stubborn." Lily grinned. "He says it runs in the family." "What family?" "Our family. You and me and Mama." Lily said it as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "We're family now, aren't we?" Jacob looked at Abigail. She was watching him, her eyes bright with tears and hope and something that needed no words. "Yeah," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I guess we are." Lily whooped with joy and threw her arms around his waist. Abigail joined them, and for a long moment they stood there, three people who had found each other against all odds, holding on tight. Outside, the winter wind was dying down. The clouds were breaking apart, revealing patches of blue sky for the first time in days. Spring was coming, and with it, a new beginning none of them had dared to dream of. That night, after Lily was asleep, Jacob and Abigail sat together by the fire. The cabin was warm, peaceful, filled with a contentment Jacob had almost forgotten was possible. "I've been thinking," Abigail said quietly. "About what? About the money, the inheritance." She turned to face him. "I don't want to go back east. I don't want to live in a city surrounded by people who knew me as Marcus Thornton's prisoner." "What do you want?" "I want to stay here, build something new." She hesitated. "But this cabin is too small for 3 people, and your land, it's good land, but it's not being used." "I'm listening." "What if we built a real house? Something bigger with room for Lily to grow? What if we started a ranch or a farm, something we could work together that would give us a future?" Jacob considered this. He'd never thought of himself as a farmer or a rancher. He'd been too busy hiding from life to build one. But that was before Abigail, before Lily, before he remembered what it felt like to hope. "I don't know anything about ranching," he admitted. "Neither do I, but we could learn." Abigail smiled. "Agnes knows everyone in the territory. She could introduce us to people who could teach us. And with the money from William's estate, we could afford to make mistakes while we figure it out." "You've really thought about this?" "I've had nothing but time to think lying in that bed." She took his hand. "I know it's a lot to ask. I know it means changing everything you've built here." "What I've built here is a hiding place, not a life." Jacob squeezed her hand. "Maybe it's time to stop hiding." "Is that a yes?" "It's a maybe, a strong maybe." He smiled, still unused to the expression. "Let's talk to Agnes, see what she thinks. If she says it's possible, then we'll try. Abigail leaned over and kissed him soft and sweet. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For not giving up. On your promise. On us." She rested her head on his shoulder. "For being the man Daniel always knew you were." Jacob wrapped his arm around her, pulling her close. The fire crackled softly. Outside, the wind had finally gone still. "I should thank you," he said, "for giving me something to live for again." "Then we're even." "I reckon we are." They sat together as the fire burned low, 2 broken people beginning to mend. The road ahead was uncertain, full of challenges, of fears of the hard work of building a life from scratch. But for the first time in 8 years, Jacob McAllister wasn't afraid of the future. He was looking forward to it. Spring came slowly to Montana that year, melting the snow inch by stubborn inch. Jacob watched the transformation from his porch, each morning coffee in hand, still marveling at how different the world looked when you had someone to share it with. 3 months had passed since the blizzard that changed everything. 3 months of healing, of building, of learning to be something other than alone. The new house was taking shape on the rise above the old cabin. Agnes had connected them with builders from Silver Creek, good men who worked hard and asked few questions. The frame was up now, the bones of a future visible against the Montana sky. "It's going to be beautiful," Abigail said, coming to stand beside him. Her ankle had healed completely, leaving only a slight limp that she insisted she barely noticed. "Bigger than anything I ever imagined living in." Having second thoughts. "Never." She slipped her hand into his. "I'm just grateful. For all of it." Jacob squeezed her fingers. He still wasn't used to this. The casual touches, the easy intimacy, the simple joy of having someone who wanted to be near him. Some mornings he woke up convinced it had all been a dream, that he was still alone in his cabin, with only Sargent and his ghosts for company. Then Lily would come bounding in full of energy and questions, and he'd remember. This was real. This was his life now. Jacob. Lily's voice rang out from the direction of the new house. Jacob, come quick, I found something. He exchanged a glance with Abigail, then set down his coffee and headed up the hill. Lily met him halfway, her face flushed with excitement. Look. She opened her cupped hands to reveal a bird's nest carefully woven from grass and twigs. It was in the rafters. The mama bird must have built it while the workers were away. Jacob examined the nest, marveling at its construction. That's a robin's nest. She'll lay her eggs soon if she hasn't already. Can we keep it? Can we leave it there? I don't want to scare her away. We'll tell the builders to work around it. Every house needs a little wild in it. Lily beamed. That's what Uncle Danny used to say. He said the best homes are the ones that make room for unexpected guests. Jacob's heart clenched at the casual mention of Daniel. Lily still spoke of her uncle sometimes, though the visits in her dreams had grown less frequent. She said he was resting now, truly resting, and only checked on them occasionally to make sure they were happy. Your Uncle Danny was a wise man. Jacob said, the words coming easier now than they once had. I wish you could have known him in person. I feel like I did. Lily tucked the nest carefully back into her hands. I'm going to show Mama. And then I'm going to make a drawing of it so I can remember exactly what it looks like when the babies hatch. She ran off before Jacob could respond, her laughter trailing behind her like music. He stood there for a moment, looking at the skeleton of the new house, feeling the spring breeze on his face. A year ago, he would have said happiness was something that happened to other people. Now here he was building a home with a woman he loved, and a child who called him by his first name like they'd known each other forever. Daniel, he thought. I hope you can see this. I hope you know I finally got it right. No answer came. But the wind seemed to gentle for just a moment, and Jacob could have sworn he caught the faint scent of wood smoke and Virginia pine, the smell of the campfires he and Daniel had shared during the war. Maybe that was answer enough. The wedding was Agnes's idea. You're living in sin, she announced one afternoon, barging into the cabin with her usual disregard for knocking. The whole territory is talking about it. Let them talk, Jacob said. What we do is our business. It's Lily's business, too. You want her growing up with people whispering about her mother, about the man her mother's living with. Abigail set down the shirt she was mending. Agnes has a point. I don't care what people... I know you don't, but I do. And Lily will eventually. Abigail met his eyes. I'm not ashamed of what we have, Jacob. I just want to make it official. For her sake, if not for ours. Jacob looked between the two women, one old and stubborn, one young and determined, and knew he was outnumbered. Fine, he said. But I'm not wearing a fancy suit. Wouldn't dream of asking, Agnes replied. You'd look ridiculous. They were married 3 weeks later in a small ceremony at the little church in Silver Creek. Agnes stood as witness, along with Judge Hartley and a handful of women from the network who had helped protect Abigail and Lily all those months ago. Lily served as flower girl, scattering wildflowers down the aisle with more enthusiasm than precision. Sargent sat in the front pew, his graying muzzle resting on his paws, watching the proceedings with the dignity of an honored guest. The minister was a young man, new to the territory, who stumbled over some of the words and blushed when he got to the part about kissing the bride. But when Jacob slipped the simple gold band onto Abigail's finger, a ring he'd made himself in his forge, with hands that had crafted so many coffins, the moment was perfect. I now pronounce you man and wife, the minister said, his voice steadying. What God has joined together, let no man put asunder. Jacob kissed Abigail softly at first, then deeper when she pulled him close. Lily cheered. Agnes wiped her eyes with a handkerchief she swore was just for show. And somewhere in a place beyond sight, but not beyond feeling, Jacob knew Daniel was smiling. That night, after the small celebration at Agnes's place, after Lily had been put to bed and the cabin had grown quiet, Abigail found Jacob standing on the porch. What are you thinking about? She asked, wrapping her arms around him from behind. Daniel. Jacob turned to face her. I keep wondering what he'd say if he could see us now. Lily says he's happy, that he approves. I know, but I wish I could hear it from him, just once. Abigail was quiet for a moment. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, worn book. I found this among William's things, she said. After everything happened, I went through his papers more carefully. This was hidden in the back of a drawer. Jacob took the book, recognizing it instantly. A Bible pocket-sized with a cover worn smooth by years of handling. Daniel's Bible, the one he'd carried throughout the war. I don't understand. Jacob said, his voice rough. How did William... There was a letter with it, from a Union soldier who'd been at the Wilderness. He wrote to Daniel's family after the war, trying to return his effects. The letter got lost, forwarded from address to address. By the time it reached William, I was already married to Marcus. And William kept it hidden. He was trying to protect me, I think. He knew how much losing Daniel had hurt me. He probably thought the Bible would only bring more pain. Abigail's eyes glistened. But I think he was wrong. I think Daniel would have wanted you to have it. Jacob opened the Bible with trembling hands. The pages were stained and fragile. The ink faded, but still legible. And there, pressed between the pages of Psalms, was a photograph. Two young men in uniform arms, slung around each other's shoulders, grinning at the camera, with the reckless confidence of those who hadn't yet learned what war really meant. Jacob recognized himself immediately, younger unscathed, still believing he would come home unchanged, and beside him Daniel Harwood. Brown hair, brown eyes, that familiar crooked smile. Looking at Jacob with an expression of pure, uncomplicated friendship. I remember this, Jacob whispered. We had it taken right before the Wilderness campaign. Daniel said he wanted proof we'd survived that long. Said when the war was over we'd look at it and laugh about how young and stupid we were. You never got the chance. No. Jacob closed the Bible carefully, holding it against his chest. No, we didn't. Abigail reached up and touched his face, her thumb brushing away the tear that had escaped down his cheek. He sent you to us, she said softly. Across all those years, all those miles, all that pain, he found a way to bring us together. That's not a broken promise, Jacob. That's a miracle. I failed him. You saved his sister. You saved his niece. You built a family in his name. Abigail's voice was fierce. That's not failure. That's love. The kind that survives death, that crosses time, that never gives up. Jacob pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. The Bible pressed between them, a bridge across 8 years of grief and guilt. I love you. He said, the words still unfamiliar on his tongue, but growing easier each time. I don't know what I did to deserve you, but I love you. You kept your promise. That's what you did. Abigail kissed him soft and sweet. Now stop talking and take your wife to bed. Despite everything, Jacob laughed. It was rusty, unpracticed, but real. Yes, ma'am. The months that followed were the happiest of Jacob's life. The new house was finished by midsummer, a proper home with 4 bedrooms, a large kitchen, and a porch that wrapped around 3 sides. Abigail filled it with furniture and curtains, and all the small touches that turned a building into a sanctuary. Lily got her own room for the first time in her life. She decorated it with drawings and pressed flowers, and the nest she'd found in the rafters carefully preserved after the baby robins had fledged and flown. They started small with the ranch, a few cattle, some chickens, a vegetable garden that Abigail tended with surprising skill. Jacob continued his coffin making, though the orders came less frequently now that he had other work to fill his days. You're different, Agnes observed during one of her regular visits. Lighter, like someone lifted a weight off your shoulders. Someone did. Jacob watched Abigail and Lily through the window, laughing together over something in the garden. Several someones. Daniel would be proud. You didn't know him. No, but I know you, and I know what you were like before they came. Agnes patted his arm. He'd be proud, Jacob, of the man you've become, of the family you've built. I hope so. I know so.
Way.
On the anniversary of the blizzard that had brought Abigail and Lily to his door, Jacob woke before dawn. He slipped out of bed without waking his wife and made his way to the porch, watching the stars fade as the sky began to lighten. 1 year. It felt like a lifetime. It felt like no time at all. Can't sleep. He turned. Lily stood in the doorway, wrapped in a quilt, her hair tangled from bed. "What are you doing up, little one?" "I had a dream." She padded across the porch to stand beside him. "About Uncle Danny." Jacob's heart skipped. "Yeah, what did he say?" "He said to tell you something. He said you'd understand." "What's that?" Lily looked up at him with those old soul eyes, and when she spoke, her voice carried an echo of something someone else. He said, "Brother, the race is finished. The faith is kept. Well done." Jacob's breath caught. The words from Timothy, the verse Daniel had loved, had quoted so often during the war. The verse Jacob hadn't been able to read for 8 years because it hurt too much. He also said, Lily's voice returned to normal, young and sweet. "He said he's going now. For real this time. He said he's been waiting to make sure you were okay, and now you are so he can rest." "Going where?" "Home." Lily smiled. "He says it's beautiful there, full of light and music and everyone he ever loved. He says someday we'll all be there together, but not for a long, long time." Jacob knelt down, taking Lily's small hands in his. "Tell him—" His voice broke. He tried again. "Tell him I'm sorry. For taking so long. For almost giving up." Lily shook her head. "He doesn't want you to be sorry. He wants you to be happy." She squeezed his hands. "He says you're his brother. Always have been, always will be. And brothers don't need apologies. They just need to know they're loved. I do love him. I always did. He knows." Lily leaned forward and kissed Jacob's cheek. "Goodbye, Uncle Danny," she whispered to the empty air. "Thank you for bringing us to Jacob. Thank you for watching over us." The air shimmered. Jacob could have sworn he felt a hand on his shoulder, warm, solid, real. And then it was gone. The presence that had been hovering at the edges of his awareness for months, maybe years, faded away like morning mist. Daniel was gone, really gone this time. But he wasn't lost. He was home. "Are you okay?" Lily asked, studying his face. Jacob nodded slowly. "Yeah, I am. For the first time in a long time, I really am." "Good." Lily yawned hugely. "Can we have pancakes for breakfast to celebrate?" "Celebrate what?" "Everything." She grinned. "Being a family. Being happy. Being here." Jacob laughed, scooping her up into his arms. She was getting too big for this, really, but she giggled and wrapped her arms around his neck like she was still 5 instead of almost 8. "Pancakes it is," he said. "Let's go wake up your mother." They went inside together, leaving the porch behind. The sun was rising now, spilling golden light across the Montana hills, painting everything with the promise of a new day. In the kitchen, Jacob made pancakes, while Lily set the table, and Abigail watched them both with sleepy contentment. They ate together, the 3 of them, and Sargent begging for scraps beneath the table, talking and laughing and simply being. A family. His family. Built from broken pieces and impossible promises, and a love that refused to die. After breakfast, Jacob excused himself and walked up the hill to where the old cabin still stood. He hadn't had the heart to tear it down. It was part of the story now, part of how they'd found each other. He sat on the porch where he'd spent so many lonely nights, where he'd first seen Lily's small figure struggling through the blizzard, where everything had begun to change. "Well, Daniel," he said aloud, "I did it. Took me 8 years and more luck than I deserved, but I did it." No answer came. He hadn't expected one. Daniel was at peace now, truly at peace, and the time for ghostly conversations had passed. But the words needed saying anyway. "I found her. I kept her safe. I love her, Daniel. Her and Lily both. More than I knew I could love anyone." Jacob's voice steadied. "I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure they're happy. making sure they know how precious they are. That's my new promise to them and to you." He pulled out the Bible still carried in his pocket and opened it to the photograph of two young soldiers with their arms around each other. "I miss you, brother, every day. But I'm not drowning anymore. I'm living. Finally, after all this time, I'm really living." A breeze stirred, carrying the scent of wildflowers and new grass. Somewhere in the valley a meadowlark sang. Jacob closed the Bible and stood. Below him he could see the new house solid and welcoming. He could see Abigail hanging laundry on the line, her dark hair gleaming in the sunlight. He could see Lily chasing Sargent across the yard, both of them moving with the boundless energy of the young. His family, his home, his second chance. He walked down the hill toward them, leaving the old cabin and its ghosts behind. As he approached, Lily spotted him and came running. "Jacob! Jacob! Mama says we can go to town tomorrow. Can we get candy? Can we see Agnes? Can we?" She launched herself at him, and he caught her swinging her around until she shrieked with laughter. "One thing at a time, little one." Abigail joined them, slipping her arm through his. "Everything okay?" "Everything's perfect." He kissed her forehead. "I was just saying goodbye to an old friend." "Daniel." "Yeah." Jacob smiled, a real smile free of shadows. "He's at peace now. Finally at peace." "Are you?" He looked at his wife, at his daughter, at the home they'd built together. He thought of all the years he'd spent hiding, grieving, believing he didn't deserve happiness. He thought of the promise he'd almost broken, and the miracle that had given him a chance to keep it. "Yeah," he said. "I really am." Lily squirmed in his arms. "Can we pick flowers for the table? Mama says flowers make everything better." "Your mama's a smart woman." "The smartest," Lily agreed solemnly. "That's what Uncle Danny always said." Jacob set her down and watched her race off toward the meadow, Sargent at her heels. Abigail leaned against his shoulder, and they stood together in the spring sunshine, watching their daughter gather wildflowers. "Thank you," Abigail said softly. "For what?" "For being here. For staying. For becoming the man Lily and I needed." She looked up at him. "For keeping your promise." Jacob thought about all the ways he could respond, all the words he could use to explain what she and Lily meant to him, how they'd saved him as surely as he'd saved them. But some things were too big for words, so instead, he just held her close, watching their daughter dance through the flowers, and let the silence speak for itself. The coffin maker had finally stopped building boxes for the dead. He was too busy building a life for the living. And somewhere beyond the sky, in a place of light and peace, a brown-haired soldier with a crooked smile watched over them all. A promise made. A promise kept. A family found. This was the ending Daniel had always hoped for. This was the beginning Jacob had stopped believing in. And this, standing in the Montana sunshine with his wife in his arms and his daughter's laughter ringing through the air, this was exactly where he was meant to be. The story of the coffin maker and the woman with the desperate eyes wasn't a tragedy after all. It was a love story. And love stories don't end. They just begin again.